going live on YouTube first, and I will let the attendees in. Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the Financial Claims Committee meeting for today, Thursday, September 9th, 2021, beginning at 7:04 p.m. We'll start the meeting with the roll call. Council Member David Hooverman.
Present.
Council Member Tom Keegan.
Here.
Council Member Nick Saccinelli.
Present.
Council Member Diana Revolus.
Here.
Council Member John Kides.
Here.
Council Member Greg Burnett is present, and Council Member George Theodoridis is not available for the meeting tonight, so we do have a quorum. Thank you. Moving on to item 3 on the agenda is public participation. We did not receive any emails electronically. Is there anyone, Larry, from the public that wishes to speak, raising their hand?
We do have one person, but they don't have their hand raised. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand electronically now by clicking on the raise hand button, and I will allow you to speak. Otherwise, we can move on. No, I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Okay, very good. So with that, we'll close item number 3, which is public participation. I also want to mention we have on the call Council Member Tom Livingston from the Common Council. Moving on to item 4, approval of the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting from August 12th, 2021. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Council Member Hooverman. Do we have any corrections, deletions, or changes? I have 3 small ones. On page 1, where it it should say motion to approve the minutes as amended, passed unanimously, as opposed to motion to approve the claims. That's on page 1. And then on page 2, we should update at the beginning where it says motion to approve the minutes as amended, simply change that to motion pass unanimously, which is the motion made by Ms. Revolus to go into executive session. And then finally on page 3, the second paragraph, we just have an extra end in there. It says maintenance equipment that is, we should take out end. It should just say that is the end of its life. And that will correct the grammar on that sentence. Were there any other changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing and seeing none. All those in favor can show by the sign of raising your hand. Okay, all right, it looks unanimous. Thank you.
Greg, I'm going to abstain, please.
Right, so we have one abstention, which is Councilmember Saccinelli. Thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us on to item 5, 6, and 7, which is the Claims Committee report. Received the monthly claims report. Review and approving as required for claims report dated September 9th, 2021. Item 6 was the narrative on tax collections dated September 9th, 2021, and monthly tax collectors report dated August 2021. So Lisa B., tax collector, you are up. And
Thank you. Good evening, folks. Can you hear me? Okie doke. We have for you this month no claims that need to be voted on due to the dollar amount, but you can see from the length of the report that it is actually voluminous because last month we did not have many refunds because we were busy collecting taxes. So this was a catch-up month. Lots of motor vehicle refunds, lots of motor vehicle credits. That's normal for this time of year, but nothing in excess of $10,000. So nothing on the claims report that requires a vote. It's for your informational purposes only. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have about them, however. With regard to the monthly reports and the narrative, you'll notice that again this month, like last month, there's 2 August reports. One is for the immediately prior fiscal year. The other is for the current fiscal year. So I'll start with the current fiscal year first, because it came first in the report. This is the new levy, the levy that was billed as of July 1st of 2021. So we're basically June, July, and August collections. We're at 52.51% as of the end of August. It's unfair to really compare this year to last year. I could crow and say we're 8% over last year, but if you'll recall last year, we gave them an extended grace period. We gave the taxpayers until October 1st. So comparing the end of August this year to last year doesn't really make any sense. We're right where we need to be at this point in the year. 52.5 is about where we need to be. We're already, believe it or not, looking ahead to our next billing, which will be usually around Thanksgiving time. I run the files and we get those bills in the mail around the second week of December. They're due January 1st, payable by February 1st. But in the meantime, this past collection went well. We had no major issues. We were busy but steady. And we have since filled out past due notices, which are called demand notices. It's not meant to imply rudeness to the taxpayer. It's just a technical term that we have to use to compel payment and to proceed with enforcement. So demand notices went in the mail the end of last month. They had September interest on them. And we're already receiving payments on those. With regard to the immediately prior fiscal year, for purposes of annual audit, the auditors examine our collections basically on a 14-month period. So they want to see what did we collect on our immediately prior fiscal year during the first 2 months of this fiscal year. So when they compare one year to the other, that's how they do it. And if you look at the August report for the 2019 grand list, you'll see our collection rate is 99.23%. That's again based on a 14-month fiscal year, but nonetheless, that was also above where we were last year. 99.23 in a city of our size with a levy of our magnitude, 350 million. That's pretty good. We were very pleased with it. We did not have the potentially expected issues because of COVID. So we were right where we needed to be relative to the budget, and we were very pleased. We did that in spite of, being short-staffed and having a little bit of trouble trying to manage the office due to COVID. But that's good news for you. That's good news for the Board of Estimate, good news for Norwalk taxpayers in general. With regard to delinquent collections, we are, as you know, almost ready to have our tax sale, which is scheduled for October 18th. Since I wrote this narrative, we had another property pay, so we're down to 39 left out of more than 220 properties that we started with in November of 2019. We've collected so far almost $7.4 million on our tax sale properties. This is our biggest tax sale ever, but we've also had 2 years to work on it. So that is also why it's so big, but 7.3 million on this. We've had our legal notices in the paper. Most of the mailings have gone out. The website is still up, and things will get busier as we get closer to the sale. We generally have about a dozen to 24 properties left on the day of the sale. We would be happy if we didn't have any at all. We would be happy if everybody were able to pay, which is the whole purpose of doing the sale. It's not to sell property, it's to compel payment. But I feel the sale has been going well. And I'll have a report for you next month. It'll be really right before the sale. It'll be about 2 weeks before the sale. Council members or anyone from the public who is interested in observing, you're welcome to come to the sale. It's right at City Hall. We start registering bidders at 3 o'clock and the sale starts at 5. And it should be over, if things go the way we expect, it should be over by 8 or 9 at night. And I'm glad to answer any questions that any of you have about the reports or the numbers or the sale or our collections in general.
Could I make a comment, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Henry.
Thanks, Greg. As you know, when COVID started in March of 2020, Lisa prepared for me a weekly collection report on a cash basis. And as she said, it's hard to compare this year's data with last year because last year we had an extended grace period. But I compared this year's collections from June 20th through the end of August and compared it with 2 years ago when we didn't have COVID. And I think that would be more of an apples and apples comparison. So 2 years ago, during those 10 weeks, we collected 178.3 million. The 10 weeks corresponding this year, we collected 191.4 million. That's an increase of 7.35%, which sounds about right for 2 years. However, this past year, we did not increase our taxes. We said we were not going to collect more from our citizens. We were going to use some of the ARPA funds. So given the fact that we are 7.35% ahead for this time period from 2 years ago, I think that shows, as Lisa said, we are at least where we should be, if not ahead. So things are looking good. Just another indicator of how well the collection department has done and how well the taxpayers of Norwalk have continued to support the city.
Thank you, Henry.
Welcome.
Did any members of the Finance Committee have any questions or comments? Councilmember Hooverman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Burnett. Lisa, you mentioned in the report that you're short-staffed. How is that personnel search going?
Thank you for asking. We have interviews scheduled this coming Monday. This is for our entry-level cashier position. It's basically a customer service, payment processing person at the counter. And we've been without that person since pre-COVID, since February of 2020. So we're anxious to get those interviews done and hopefully have somebody on board within the next, I'd say, 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would just add
Thank you.
regarding that. What happened was more than 18 months, 21 months ago, before COVID, 2 people in the collector's office retired. Okay, one person was replaced, I don't know, 4 months later. Excellent person with senior credentials from another city. And when we got to the early retirement in October of 2020, we said, let's see how the department works if we don't replace that person. Maybe we have a savings. And after about 6 or 8 months, Lisa said, we've done as well as we can, but we really need another body at the desk, arms and legs. And we then got the approval in the budget. We posted. Lisa, how many applicants were there?
272.
So when we say we're interviewing 5 or 6 people, what's nice is we have a very nice collection from which to select, and we expect to get an outstanding individual in the next 4, 6, 8 weeks to wrap that up, to give her the assistance.
That's great news. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Lisa, I did have a comment and a question. I just wanted to go back to the statement at the end of the second paragraph where you say 99.23% current collection rate. In a city of this size is outstanding. And I just want to commend you and your department once again, because that would not happen on its own. Through all of your efforts, the innovation that you brought, especially during COVID, to ensure that there was accessibility by citizens to pay their tax warrants, was outstanding. So thank you again. And going past 99, we normally have a big woo-hoo when you pass 99. So there it is. Okay. All right. But my question is, how does that compare to other cities? I know you're very involved with working with other tax collectors. How does that 99.2% compare to other surrounding cities or any city in Connecticut for that matter?
That's a good question, and I'm glad to answer it. And I thank you for your positive feedback. What I generally do is I try to compare us to we're the sixth largest city in Connecticut, Norwalk. So I like to compare us to the other 5 large cities: Bridgeport, Waterbury, New Haven, Stamford. Who am I missing? We're always the highest. Our 99 point, whatever it will be, will always be the highest of the top 6. You will find in some of the smaller towns like the Reddings, the Wiltons, Ridgefield, towns like that, New Canaan, sometimes their rate may end up being higher than ours. But of the bigger cities, ours is the highest. And it's been that way, I think, since before I came to Norwalk. Quite honestly, it has to do with the way that we bill our taxes. We use a statement billing. It has to do with the fact that we send a second installment billing, which a lot of towns don't do. We feel that it's worth the extra cost to do that. We bill our delinquent notices twice a year. So if you get a bill that you don't pay, you're going to get a delinquent notice from us within probably 60 days. We file our liens early. We do a lot of things ahead of time, and we do a lot of our own enforcement. So all of these things contribute to the fact that we can keep that collection rate high. We also depend very heavily on support from the administration, from the mayor's office, from the council, so that when, for example, a taxpayer might complain, I can't get a building permit, I can't get a beach sticker because they tell me I have to pay my taxes. The answer that we get from the administration and the council is, yes, that's right. We treat everybody the same, and you do have to pay your taxes in order to get your permit or to get your beach sticker. We would not be able to enjoy the fruits of this kind of a collection rate if we did not have that support consistently over the years. Consistent support for doing things like tax sales, for sending the marshal out door to door, for doing wage garnishments and things like that. So it really, it's an all-encompassing program that we do, but we would not be able to do it without the support of the administration through this administration and even in past administrations and past councils. So I'm very, very grateful for that, because you make it easier for me to do what I need to do. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Lisa? Okay, hearing and seeing none. So items 5, 6, and 7 are for informational purposes only. Good information, I might add. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8, which is to receive the Oak Hills Authority monthly financial statement for July 2021. And we have Mike DePalma from the Oak Hills Park Authority on to give us the update. Hello, Mike.
Hello. Thank you, everybody. Pretty straightforward. Revenue was down slightly due to the weather, which was also coincided with the expenses being down. So in terms of net income, was pretty much right on budget. I think we're about $200 off. Finished the month with about $500,000 in the bank account, which is kind of unheard of for Oak Hills. At the last meeting, we approved the authorization to move forward with continuous cart paths while we do have money there, which is exciting because in just doing some studies on what happened in April and May and into June with revenue that we lost by not being able to have the carts out there, we believe that the payback on that investment will be pretty quick. So that'll be something that's it's a time to make that kind of investment. So, but other than that, same thing. I mean, we're looking at pretty similar numbers in August. We had a couple bad weekends with storms, but that would also bring down costs of water and some of those other things. So summer continues to go strong, and we're going into the fall with good numbers as well. So I am open to answer any questions on the financial statement. Oh, and we were able to pay back about $12,000 off the round revenue to the city on the loan for the restaurant.
Thank you. Any questions for Oak Hills? Okay, seeing none. Thanks for the update, Mike. And we'll look forward to an update next month, and that should show all the results for the summer season.
Yep, absolutely. And the audit should be ready too. Should I stick around for the next item too, in case any questions come up?
That would be appreciated.
Yep, I'll stick
Thank
around.
you. Okay, moving on to item 9, which reads as follows: authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents necessary to consent and approve the food and beverage services license agreement dated March 30th, 2021 by and between Oak Hills Park Authority and Dry Dock Smoking Aces LLC, conditioned upon said license agreement being amended to expressly provide the city of Norwalk with the right to terminate the license agreement without cause upon 90-day advance written notice to Dry Dock Smoking Aces LLC and such additional terms as corporate counsel's office may require. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Hooverman, thank you. And we have corporate counsel, Darren Callahan, to bring some commentary to this. And also Mike DePalma from Oak Hills is on to answer any questions as well.
Great. Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, committee members, for having me tonight to speak on the issue. As you know, the underlying lease requires common council approval. We reviewed the license. It's a license agreement between Oak Hills and Smoking Aces, or the restaurateur. They're providing food services out of the clubhouse, and I believe it actually also on the course as well. And we had wanted to add a provision in there that we thought was appropriate given our obligations with respect to the course and the use of the land of the course. And we reached out and spoke, or I reached out and had a conversation with Oak Hills Council and kind of went over what this would look like, and provided, you know, a sample of the language, and we've exchanged a few emails, and it seems as though everything we're proposing is both satisfactory to Oak Hills and to this specific restaurateur. So I think we're in great shape. I believe they're intending on going forward with executing the amendment in form and substance as you know we're looking to see, and in turn we'll issue essentially what would be akin to a notice of landlord consent. It'd be like a one-page document, and not much to it, but basically memorializing that we're approving the license. And with that, I can answer any questions anyone has on the issue. It's really pretty straightforward. But again, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Hoolman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What is the term on the lease?
The term, I believe it is a 5-year term. I don't have the actual lease up in front of me, but it's terminable. It's actually a license, Councilman. And the distinction being that a leasehold estate doesn't arise, and you don't get into landlord tenant issues in summary process court. But I believe the term is. I'm sorry?
5-year license, is that what we're
I believe so. That's just working off memory, but there's a 90-day termination provision in favor of Oak Hills without cause. So even though the term is 5 years, or it may be a 5-year with a 5-year renewable, there still exists the clause to essentially exit the agreement earlier than the term.
Great. And I guess the next question I have is, Mike, where are we at with opening? I know there had been some issues with the building and some permitting and getting the building up to shape. Where is it at?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The building is ready. It's substantially complete. We're going through just approval processes and going through some things with the zoning committee. I'm actually going there tomorrow because obviously it's frustrating for us to not have this thing open. So I'm going down there. We're actually creating a subcommittee to make sure that this thing gets moving forward. But it's beautiful if anybody's been down there. It's going to be a real destination, I think, once it's ready. Well, it is ready. Just once it gets open.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Councilman, I can confirm that it's a little bit longer than 5 years. The end date is December 31st, 2026.
And there's a 5-year option at the end of
There,
that?
there is not on this.
There's not.
Yes, it's just a
All right.
pure 5-year term.
Great. Thanks, Darren.
You got it.
Any other questions or comments related to this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of item 9, show by the sign of raising your hand. I think that, John, are you in agreement, or John Kites?
John texted me. He had a family emergency. He had to sign off.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
So those that are present are all in favor. So it is unanimous. So this item will move forward to the next council meeting, which is scheduled for next week, Tuesday, September 14th, for full council approval. That moves us on to item 10. And this item is the item that was tabled from last month. So I will read the actual item that we, with the wording that we used last month, as opposed to what's showing on the agenda. So it's the exact item that we tabled. And it reads as follows: authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a contract amendment between City of Norwalk and Advanced Corporate Network, Inc., DBA Digital Back Office, ACA, to authorize the addition of a new location at 1 Park Street, Norwalk, Connecticut. The parties agreed to the addition of 110 GIGE managed optical Ethernet service at the following service location: Circuit 1, City Hall, 125 East Avenue, 2, 1 Park Street, with a monthly recurring fee of $1,536 paid for by the Board of Education from expense account number 2ES 28400-430-58. Do I have a motion on this item? Councilmember Revelous, thank you. And we have on the call tonight to discuss this particular item, we have Ralph Valsezi, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Digital Learning and Innovation as well as Tom Hamilton, the Board of Education Chief Financial Officer. Thank you, Ralph and Tom.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Burnett. I'm Tom Hamilton, Chief Financial Officer. I'll introduce the item and then ask Ralph Valancisi to talk about it in some more detail. One of the things I did want to provide the members of the Finance Committee with was a little bit of background, because you may or may not be aware of all the history related to the establishment of the MAN, or Municipal Area Network, but it was actually an initiative that went back to the Alex Knopp administration. Mayor Knopp led that effort to install a fiber optic network around the city that would serve both municipal buildings and education buildings. And so Norwalk really was on the forefront in putting in place the infrastructure necessary to support high-speed data, which of course, as we know now, is really critical in everything we do. And certainly with COVID was doubly or triply more important than ever. So it was really very prescient on the part of the city back in 2003 to move forward with the development of that metropolitan area network with the fiber optic connecting all of our municipal and school buildings. One of the things that you may or may not be aware of, and Ralph will touch on this when he gets into it, is that network is underwritten in a pretty significant degree by the fact that the federal government has something called the E-rate program, and the E-rate program provides subsidies for various telecommunications and data type services, but specifically for education entities and for public libraries. So it's because we have all the schools that we have on the metropolitan area network, as well as the Norwalk Public Library buildings, that we are able to underwrite the cost. The city is able to underwrite the cost of that MAN to make it affordable. Without the E-rate program, the costs would be several times what they are. And that has some implications in terms of the cost of this particular amendment. So what's before you on your agenda tonight is the third amendment to the agreement with Advanced Corporate Networking, Digital Back Office. They were the ones that originally built out the metropolitan area network. Because of the E-rate rules and regulations, the city couldn't build it out directly itself or operate itself, but we have to lease the network. That's one of the threshold requirements to be able to use E-rate funding, is it has to be a leased network. And of course, we want to make sure that that network is very robust, and having an outside party that is, this is their business. They are able to make sure that that network is up and running for us 24/7, 365 days a year. So in any event, this is the third amendment to that particular agreement with Advanced Corporate Networking. It's really a relatively small amendment. Really what we're talking about is hooking up an additional location just down the street here from City Hall, 1 Park Street. The district is moving forward with a lease of that facility, and Ralph's going to talk more about what's currently in that building. But in order to effectively operate, we need to have digital access to that location on our metropolitan area network. So Ralph, why don't you talk about the specifics of this proposal?
Sure, no, definitely. Thanks, Tom. You did a really good job of introducing this, and I apologize. It's allergies, so I'm a little bit raspy here. But yeah, for the most part, to just kind of capitalize a little more on and explain a little more about how E-rate works. E-rate funding is a tax that you actually see. It's out by the it's funded through the FCC, and depending on your free and reduced lunch status in a district, you get a certain percentage of a reimbursement on your telecommunications pieces that you have within the district. Years ago, it used to cover things like cell phones. It doesn't anymore, but it does cover internet connections for us. That being said, our internet connections, we get an 80% reimbursement on that. So if it cost us $1,000 a month for a connection, we're actually only paying $200 on that, and we get a federal reimbursement on that piece. The qualifier for that is that we have to have students that are actually working with us, usually within that building in some capacity. So it's made for schools and libraries where children congregate to be able to access the internet or any telecommunications. This building for the last year has been part of our transitional program. So for our specialized services, we have an 18 to 21 transitional program where we currently lease space within Park Street, and students are taught life skills and other skills. So it is actually an extension of the school system, similar to what NECC is with our pre-K program. So what we're looking to do is include this into that fiber ring, so that then once that's in place, I can then apply also for E-rate for this, and we will start to, as of, we apply in November. I believe the E-rate filing window closes then in February, and the funding starts to flow in July. So it would be July of 2022, where that $1,500 would go down to closer to $300 a month for the cost of this moving forward. But I mean, I think that's just from a cost perspective. We have to have the building in place in order to be able to apply for E-rate. And we do have students in there, and we plan to continue to have students in there. We did the same process with NECC. So we were able to add NECC into our fiber network as well. And we do get that same reimbursement on the connection there.
Ralph, one of the questions that came up during last month's meeting was, what exactly is One Park Place? One Park Street, I should say. Can you elaborate? Do we own that building? Are we leasing the building? What is the purpose of the building? That was a question that was
Dave probably couldn't, yeah. So I can talk a little bit about it, what we are currently doing there, but I think Tom can maybe just jump in too as well.
Sure.
So we currently are leasing a portion of that building for our 18 to 21 transitional program. We've been doing that for over a year currently, but we are looking to turn that into, as Tom had mentioned, our family center. And I don't know, Tom, if you want to talk about
let me elaborate a little bit further. So the building is owned by HSC, the Human Services Council, which is a 501c3 here in Norwalk. And they have some space that's available, and the district is in the final stages of leasing the building on a annual year-to-year basis. The lease will roll over from year to year unless it's terminated by either party. But the district, as Ralph said, we currently have the 18 to 21 program in there with students. I think there's about 25 students, if I remember correctly, that are presently in that program on the first floor. They will be moving up to the third floor, and ultimately we will then be using the first and second floors for the development of the family center. And you may recall some earlier discussion about the board's initial request for capital funding to develop a family center at Briggs. That project ultimately was not funded. Capital project was not funded by the city. And it was quite an expensive project. I think it was about a $7 million capital request. So the district is moving forward to lease property. It's much more cost effective really for us to do that. It's an excellent location for this use. Just in terms of the family center, you'll recall what we're talking about here is really creating a one-stop shop for Norwalk families who need to interact with the school system. Presently, registration for new students coming into the district it's a decentralized process that starts at each individual school. So it's necessary for parents of new students to first, start at their school if they happen to know where it is. Then they have to interact with the district health office over things like vaccinations. They have to interact with the transportation office over bus stops. If they are multilingual learners, they have to interact with our multilingual welcome center where they undergo testing to determine their placement in terms of what sort of language skills and language services they may need. If they're a special education student, they have to visit with our special education department. If they have questions about food services, or they need to find out how you buy your student school meals, you need to go visit someone else at food services. Now technology in terms of students having access to devices is another place that people need to go. So all of these things will really be consolidated into a one-stop shop. We know from all of the surveying and all of the focus groups that the superintendent and others have attended with parents, that one of the areas of greatest frustration with the school system is this not knowing where you need to go to get things done, to get the services that your student needs in place. All of our student-facing, parent-facing services are going to be centralized here at the Family Center. And so families are going to have one place that they need to go to. One Park Street is in a convenient location. You're really within walking distance of the Transit District Pulse Point down on the Wall Street area. They've got parking there. It's close to City Hall. So to the extent we need to have staff down there for things, we can get down there quickly and easily. So we really have concluded it's really an ideal location for us to move forward with this important initiative. So that's what it's all about. What's before you is really just the rather small piece of getting in place this data connection so that we have access to the technology there that we need.
Yeah, for both the students as well as the Welcome Center.
Right. Council Member Revelous, and then Council Member Hooverman.
Hi, thank you for explanation. I guess my questions or my concerns or holdups is that we again, not only the fact that we were supposed to use Briggs, but to say that the building, but to say that we want these types of resources and we actually took away the Briggs program in the first place would actually constitute communities and families that needed that, and families who are right now who fell under that 2018 to 21 something, and kids you completely deserted. Secondly, this does sound good, but then why is central office there? Like, this should be in central office at City Hall with the school. Like, I feel like this is a little bit redundant. All our schools should have these capabilities. Understanding the child's where they're at when they're coming in per grade level, I feel should be either at the school or central office should be half of what this resource center is trying to be. So just in clarification of why we've removed certain things that we're doing this for families, to bring it back, and schools that should just normally have these type of structures right within the schools themselves. And if anything, main office, central office should be that support. Why then again are we creating an additional building for all of this when this should really just be in central office?
So
and facilitated out to different schools, like if it's a high schooler, middle schooler, elementary schooler.
So Ms. Revels, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, though, was the 18 to 21 program here is a life skills program. It's specialized. It's not the same thing that was at Briggs. This is actually a life skills program. It's
understandable, but those kids were left out and would need those and didn't receive that. And we had a bunch of kids who still to this day didn't get those type of after or during there, and we took it away from them. So I just don't get it.
Well, a couple of things. One, the decision to close down Briggs was made a number of years ago by the board. So that wasn't a recent decision. That was a decision that was made about 4 years ago. So
that's not the point. Yeah, no, I get that. No, not to put that.
So I don't think the board had indicated with our capital budget request this past year that we felt that the creation of the Family Welcome Center was a very high priority for the district because it addressed a very significant, what we feel is a very significant problem with the way that we interact with our families currently. So that's why we proposed it at Briggs. Now, because of the cost, we understand, a $7 million price tag. It didn't receive funding from the city, and understandably, we said we need to look at another option, another plan. What is another way to provide the services to our families that they need? Because again, the district has these services presently, but these services are presently decentralized. So each school does its own registration, and then parents have to sort of navigate through the central office to get access to things like special education services or multilingual or multi-language learner services and other specialized services. So we're not, we're really just reconfiguring. We're taking some functions that are presently in central office, which there's no more space available to put anyone else in City Hall. But we're taking some people out of City Hall and then would be moving them over to this new location at One Park, as well as centralizing registration there.
Okay, I guess for me, and especially not only being on a council, but being a parent and advocating for students, I don't see how this is actually, and maybe I just don't see it yet, but I don't see how this is helpful. Removing it from central office and also being like families that live all throughout Norwalk, right? So even if you think it's close to like the bus, but then what if I could afford even going there, walking there, drive, whatever, right? If the school, my counselors and the structures within the schools that I'm working with and central office in itself structures are strengthened because of these difficulties, I think that should be more necessary than finding a whole new location to add people to go to. I'm not trying to just throw it off. I'm just giving a little bit of a different perspective. Let's say I'm a mother right now of a student who's going to go to college or whatever. Where I want to be and I'm talking to is in the school, with the counselors, want to directly talk to central office. I don't want to go to another person or another place or go out. And especially if transportation or finances is a problem, I need to make those accessibilities accessible. So I don't know where the adding of structures. And then on top of it, we've literally taken away certain structures from students that could have done this in different arrays. I'm just using Briggs as an example, but we literally have taken these exact same structures away from our students. Now we're bringing it back to the centralized office that is away from the schools and away from central office. So I'm just confused, if that makes sense. Not to hinder, it's just I'm confused.
Yeah,
I
mean, I understand the point you're making. I guess The issue is that some of it does have to be centralized because of the fact that many of these services are very specialized. And so we can't put a multi-language learning testing center in every single school. It would cost too much money to do that.
But that's why we have, like, for example, that's why we use things like language line. We have health facilities in every school. I think that should be in every school. Like, if there's a language situation, we have over 65 different languages. We have a language line scenario. We use systems properly so that we have proper structures within each individual school. I just don't see how putting it to one space.
The
For me, I don't see it.
Yeah, testing though, and assessment of students of where they stand when they come into the district is a little different than the language line. We do have those services.
But they can actually help you in those too. They can help you with the testing. They can help you virtually. They can help that. All of this could be helped. So again, there's ways to do it, making it more cohesive and not just throwing another place. I, for me, not for everybody else, I just see for me as a parent, as an advocate, and as a person of a family that comes from another language and a second generation who came from a mother who created the new arrivals, which works right in the schools to do exactly what you were doing when it originally started and started in Dolan School directly. I don't see how it would come outside of schools for me. But you guys also have other questions. I don't want to keep it. I'm just saying my confusions to it.
Thank you for your question and comments. Councilmember Hooverman.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett. I got a few things here, so we're going to go on a little path with it. First of all, though, I just want to build just a quick comment based on what Council Member Revolus has just spoken about, which is, and this expands on this restructuring of the NPS that has gone on this last year, and a lot of talk about decentralization, and now you're talking about recentralizing. And so I'm a little confused about how we reconcile those two items at this particular point. But that's not the question. I don't want to get down that rabbit hole right at the moment. I'm curious about a couple of things, and work with me a second on this. The learning center that is the dyslexia work that's behind Briggs. Does the district rent that, or is that owned by the city?
That's owned. That's a city building. And that, as far as I know, will stay there because
no, I'm just saying that's owned by the city, and that's a city building. So yes. Then it falls under the purview of similar to any city of the city buildings. If the roof needs to be fixed, it comes through the land use committee, and we talk about it and we get it fixed, right? How about Central Kitchen? Is that owned by the city or is that rented?
Yeah, that's owned also by the city. Now, when the building is occupied by the Board of Ed, then the Board of Ed has certain responsibilities and to maintain the structure, and then certain responsibilities fall to the city. So I believe based on the city ordinance, any capital project that exceeds $250,000.
It's actually 400.
Oh, is it 400? Okay, it's moved up to 400. That then flows through the city and becomes a capital project that Alan Lowe manages and is managed through the city. If there is a smaller capital project, but it was funded in the capital budget, then that also goes through the land use committee, but it's managed by the MPS facilities department.
Okay, and that's fine.
It's a smaller item that's in the operating budget, then that's managed through the Board of Education.
Okay, now how many buildings does the NPS actually rent in the city?
Well, we're currently renting a portion of 1 Park Street.
Park Street.
Ralph, I'm just trying to go through my mind to think if we've got other rental properties. We have
Nope.
the school bus depot, which is actually jointly leased by the city and the Board of Education, is another leased property. There is a building on there, but the primary lease is really the lease of the land for the storage of the buses.
So
Those are the 2 that come to mind right now, but there may be some others if I just, I may not be clicking immediately.
your lease right now on 1 Park is already executed?
Yes.
And for how many floors? You're taking over the whole building, or is HSC keeping part of it? What's the makeup there?
Well, HSC will be keeping their offices there. And then we currently we lease 1 floor, but we would be leasing the rest of the building except for the portion that's occupied by HSC. And HSC has also proposed putting a health center in there that they would operate.
And what's the cost, if I may ask, of this rental of this particular building?
It's $17 a square foot, about 14,800 square feet. So it's about $250,000.
$250K a year. Okay. And then how much fit out needs to be done to do all of this new centralization from central office?
I think it's about $250,000.
And I'm just, you're gonna have to help me with understanding where that money's coming from.
We have grant funds that'll cover those costs.
Why wouldn't that money go through structures that we already have and strengthen them? Why are we taking money? I'm sorry, why would we execute money in this way too, even if you have it? Why would you do it in this way?
We expect to occupy this space for the long term. We believe that this is a needed facility in order for the district to operate and serve our families. So we're going into this with the expectation that we expect to continue to occupy that space, over the long term.
So that's then long term, we're talking about a fairly high ticket item for the district that's going to go into the general operating budget that ultimately is going to come back to this body to have to talk about year in and year out, along with other increases that happen, correct?
Well, I mean, we would certainly welcome the notion sometime in the future of the city considering a purchase of the property, but that's not something that, we put on the table now. So we're prepared to,
But
build.
then on a purchase, there's a whole process that gets followed. But what I'm getting at is, I guess there's no process for the district to go out and rent a building that has to be followed in any way from a city standpoint when we start to talk about fiscal responsibility and all of those things. So I think that the response that I know I had and a number of other people that I've spoken with have had is they had no idea that this was happening until suddenly this item about putting the node there came in front of us. And I think that's the bigger part of the question is that there was no discussion whatsoever about outlays of money that actually, I mean, I'm sorry, this sounds like a lot of money to me, especially if you're talking about being in you want to rent the building for 10 years. Well, that's $2 million right there, $200,000 a year. So, I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about the transparency of this particular venture with the proper committees within the council as well. So that's kind of what I'm driving at here. And also, when it comes down to things getting done, we had a bathroom situation through middle schools this year that the city stepped in this summer and did an awful lot of work on, so that, you know, the money starts having to be allocated to take care of certain things. Are we now going to be looking at allocating monies to take care of things at this building when the district says money's tight? And that's a concern that I think is shared by a number of people on the council. So.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. The Board of Education, you know, reviewed this and authorized this in June in a public meeting. And obviously it was on the agenda and at a public meeting that was broadcast on YouTube and open to the public. So this wasn't done, you know, under cover of darkness. This was authorized by our board through the normal channel and normal process for doing that.
And we had a joint facilities meeting and a joint finance meeting that we never had a conversation about this particular item. And I think that's the problem. Those are the forum. We're trying to open up lines of communication and we're not seeing communication. And I think that's what I'm responding to, because I'll be frank with you. I'm a huge champion of the schools, and I have been a huge champion of the schools and of getting as much money as we possibly can into that forum. But I'm a little I'm a little aghast, and I don't understand why we're not having this as a huge ticket item for the city of Norwalk through the public schools, and why this wasn't talked about or brought to our attention even. So I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we have on the call Tom Livingston, who's the chairman of the Building and Land Use. Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Burnett. So I have a couple questions on this because I'm following on Mr. Hooverman's comments. So this is $250,000 at operating money, right? Operating funds?
Correct.
I mean, you say it's coming from grants, but
it's going to be paid from grant funds, but ultimately.
No, but would those, if you didn't spend the grant money on this, would you use it on other aspects of the educational programs?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So next question is, at what point does this year-to-year lease become a capital lease, so to speak? So for example, on the bus depot, which you referenced, that came to the council. Now, I think the city was also a party to that, but I'm just, wondering about the process here myself. The city, you didn't get the funding for the Welcome Center, but you went ahead and did a Welcome Center anyway. And you're taking money from the operating budget that you told us was too sparse as it was. And so I guess the question though really is, and maybe it's an accounting question, I guess maybe Henry or Tom, you want to answer it. At what point do you think a lease like this needs to be approved by the council?
Well, the distinction between the school bus depot lease and this lease is the school bus depot lease was a 25-year lease. And so that lease required going to the council because of the length of the term. This lease that we're talking about here is a one-year lease that is renewable year after year. So it's a different lease. We can get out of it, essentially at, on fairly short notice. And so, if circumstances change and we decide that it's, not the direction we want to go, we're not obligated to stay in that lease. So there's a pretty big distinction between the two. One is a one-year lease. The other is a 25-year lease.
Well, leave it. 25 is clearly a long term, but you're saying you're going to go 1 year to year. You said before for multiple years. I think you mentioned 10 years. Maybe I got that wrong. So maybe we're playing semantics here. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on the Welcome Center. I'm more concerned about the process. And maybe I'll ask Henry the question. At what point does the city look for council approval of capital leases?
I don't know those rules. I mean, I would defer to our corporate counsel and attorneys. I guess what I'm concerned about is taking capital expenditures, converting them to operating expenses to bypass an approval process. In the operating budget, my experience with the schools is they ask for a budget which gets approved or not approved. And then the Board of Ed decides how they spend their operating money. The capital process is more extensive. They're large ticket items and project by project gets approved. I'll go back. Let me talk about the issue at hand, which is fiber wiring to this building. Okay, now we're talking about adding fiber. And again, here's a case where we don't pay to get the fiber in there one time. It's done by digital back office, and then it's just built into the annual charges. Right, Ralph? Is that my understanding? And those charges are annual forever. So now you're taking another capital expenditure, putting it into an operating expense, and we're making decisions. And 5, 10, 15 years from now, we're still paying for it.
Well, actually, Henry, if we did decide to leave, we can cut that fiber so it can be removed as well.
Right. I think the agreement with digital back office, as I understand it, says it runs until September 30th, 2025.
Yeah, it's 3 years.
And so
So that means that if after 1 year we abandon this, you said it was a year-to-year lease, we're still going to pay for 3 years. That's
not consistent with what you just said, Tom. It means you're planning a longer term contract, and
Also, you're not going to get your grant money because you won't have kids in the building anymore.
Right.
Well, you know,
Well, we've had the students in that building for over a year. And I don't think that there's no intention of moving that program out at any time.
Right, and it's a mandated
If you abandon the building, say, because for whatever reason, and we don't have any students in the building anymore, then you don't get the grant money that helps to supplement the cost of the digital back office, and it snowballs down.
And I would just say philosophically, it seems that the city of Norwalk's approach is that the city owns all the buildings, every single school building, and that's how the public schools operate in buildings that we own. And yes, there's a technical distinction. If it's less than 400,000, then your maintenance department looks at it. But if it's a significant capital project, we are responsible. Alan Lowe works with all the real estate for the city. So here's a case where a welcome center was proposed, it was shot down, and now the Board of Ed has approved a lease. Yes, it's year to year, but its intention is to be there long term, and we go from there.
Council member Tom Keegan had his hand up. Thank you.
Exactly my point, Henry, was that Mr. Hamilton indicated just about 15 minutes ago that this was a long-term endeavor. And now we're talking about being able to cut it year to year to year. So my question would be, which is it? Is it long-term or is it year to year? And to Mr. Uvelman's point, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, that these expenses for this operation of a family center or a welcome center, whichever you prefer to call it, at some point, I would expect that the grant money is going to run out. Would I be correct in saying that?
Well, we don't know what's going to happen with grant money, but we do know that the ESSER money is likely to run out. But we have a budget, an operating budget of $208 million. A $250,000 lease is about 0.1% of that budget. So this is, I understand the concern, but the reality is that this is a high priority for the superintendent, a high priority for our board. And, they made a decision to go forward to build out to establish a a family center because we think that there are significant benefits to having a one-stop shop to service our needs of our families. And, if it turns out that, to answer your question, the lease is a 1 year, year-to-year lease. The district can get out of it, with a 90-day notice. We can get out of the lease at the end of the year. And if the financial circumstances change such that we can't afford it, or decide if a future board decides there are other higher priorities, we can get out of it. But right now, certainly, we're not going into it with the expectation that this is a 1 year endeavor, because we think that the need is an important need that is going to be an ongoing need. So we would expect to, after the grant funds in 2 years are no longer, if they're no longer available, then we would look to move that to the district operating budget, or perhaps there will be another grant that could be available to pay for that. One of the things I will say is the state of Connecticut, as well as the federal government under the ESSER grant application, has identified family engagement as being one of the really top priorities in terms of moving the needle on connecting with students so that they can achieve both academically as well as to meet their social and emotional needs. So family engagement is an important part of what the Board of Education does. It's an important part of connecting with our students. It's an important part of the success of our students, is making sure that those families are fully engaged in their children's education. So that's what this is about.
I'd echo that, Tom. I think you said that well. It's like the family center itself, the idea of a family center is a long-term investment and a long-term engagement that we need to have. I mean, that cannot go away. We kind of know that at the moment. It's such a critical piece for our schools. Just getting back to Mr. Hoverman's and the comments, we don't plan on moving the 18 to 21 program. I mean, it's like, it makes sense for it to be there. It's been there. So I do know, like I said, moving forward, the goal of having those students there, we have them there right now. And we plan on continuing having the program there. It's a very effective space for the program at the moment and stuff. We just want to capitalize on more space.
I just have one more question, Chairman Burnett, if I may, and that's,
so hold on, Tom.
aren't we going?
Tom, hold
Yes,
on.
I'm
So Tom Keegan has another, Councilman Keegan has another question, and Council Hooverman, and then Council Revolus, and then we'll circle back to the motion at hand. Thank you.
Yeah, my question's related to our agreed upon fact finding to try to see if there's a way that we can save money. Do we think, with that in mind, that this is prudent to be working on a welcome center right now, or should we wait to see if the efficiency study and what that says? That's my question.
I mean, I think obviously the board feels that this is a high priority, that this is something that the board needs to move forward with, and wants to move forward with. And so we believe that if anything, the efficiency study will identify the creation of this centralized registration office as being, we think they will identify that really as a efficiency move in some respects on the part of the district, as well as being more effective for parents. We think there's actually efficiencies to be gained by not having individual schools have to handle some of those responsibilities over the summer when they're very short-staffed at school locations. A lot of families come in the summer who are new to the city, and it's very difficult to navigate a situation to find a school and then find out that that building isn't open that, when they need to be there. So I think there's really some efficiencies to be gained here.
Councilmember Hooverman.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett. I want to clarify something. I don't have an issue with parent engagement and what this represents. I think that's a positive thing, and especially after the year and a half that we've spent in the pandemic situation, that these types of things are needed, and we're finding that throughout the nation. My issue goes to something that Mr. Livingston said, which is process. What is the process? And I'm going to just say what I feel is the elephant in the room, which is you have something that has a $200,000 a year ticket. If you went to a 2-year lease, it would be at $400,000 a year. And then does that trip the capital side? And you should have come to us. So then it looks like the choice was, well, we're going to stay here for 10 years, but we're going to do it on a year-to-year basis. And then the city doesn't have anything to say. And that's where I feel that the process from an optics standpoint looks like it was subverted. And that's the question that I had raised earlier. And that's all I'll say. I yield to Ms. Revolus.
Councilman Hooverman, I do also want to state, it actually behooves me to state that engagement is being connected to this, especially as a parent and someone who works with children. Engagement happens within the schools. One of my questions is if you even ask the YMCA about this, but I feel it would even be less expensive to put people in the schools to do this. Engagement happens with the families in the schools, especially in the summer, to understand the school, for the child to get familiar with the school, to understand the teachers in the school, to get the establishments and everything that's in the school. It would literally be less expensive to get people to do this exact same things in the buildings that we already own, instead of creating something on repeat that we've already taken from our community in the first place. Then secondly, again, with the why just this building? Have we asked other buildings? Have we had conversations with the YMCA, for example, about what's going on there? Why? I don't even see how even family engagement, to remove it from central office or remove it from the actual school in which the child is attending and would need the help from, makes sense, especially for engagement. In particularly with how important family engagement is directly to the school success. It's a PTA, SGC type of thing, depending on how successful that school is. To remove these type of services away from the school, from the child is receiving it, just because it's on some centralized someplace across the street. I don't get it. It really doesn't make sense to me. I don't see it working in the manner you're expressing. Yeah, and then I will have to double and just say that I just want to back up my other councilmen around me, that I just want to say that the process part to me as well. Just want to give that it's a big of an issue and a problem. I just wanted to say that as well, but I don't see how this helps in engagement, removing it from the schools. So maybe you can help me with that one.
Yeah, let me try to address that a little bit further, because there may be a little confusion about the services that will be provided at the family center here, because we have the 18 to 21 program there now, and that will continue to stay there. But generally, this is not a building that students will be at regularly, throughout the day. Students will still be in their school buildings getting services that they need in their school buildings. This is really the precursor work that has to take place. If you have a student who is new to the district and who needs to be tested as to what their English language proficiency is, so we can determine where they need to be placed in terms of what kind of language skills developments they need. It's that kind of testing service that would.
Then I completely understand, and I would
We're not
still
saying
say,
that our multilingual learner students are
No,
going to be getting their
okay.
services in this building. They'll be getting their services at their regular school building. And same thing with special ed services. But if a parent is, feels that they are not getting the types of all of the special ed services that they need, the special ed department has an ombudsman, a parent ombudsman. That person will be located at the family center, so that a parent has an issue that they want to talk to somebody in, who would be sort of in central office in our special education department. That would be a place for them to go. But all the services that the student receives would be, in their home school or wherever it is that they would normally be receiving those services.
And we will
Understandable, and I understand that. I just want to let you know, I do then completely am on the page of what's going on, which would then 100% double back on that should happen in the school, especially where the services will happen, especially with a parent who needs to know the school and the teachers and the people who will be engaging with their child for these additional services. And if needed, then to connect with central office. Again, I do not see we're separating where the services will be had to another office, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Well,
part
I'm
of
sorry, Mr. Ralph.
Yeah, part of the plan is also have family liaisons that actually work that are at the buildings doing that type of work too as well. You've got to understand though, Ms. Revel said that a lot of these services, especially these specialized the testing and stuff that we're talking about, are things that we don't have the capacity to do a center at every building to be able to make that happen.
So then would we partner with people like the Y or the Carver or people that are already in a place to be able to do this without this type of cost, and then again initiating it back into the system? I really don't think this is a ticket that the school needs to be taking on in this building. These accessibilities and resources and necess are needed, but can be applied and given in a more effective way than just putting it in this building. And I just think, because of what you guys are saying, personally for me.
At this point, we have a motion on the floor that I'd like to circle back to. It was properly moved to approve the addition of the MAN network, the fiber optic from City Hall to One Park Place. So if there's no other, Mr. Sachinelli, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Burnett, I suggest that I recommend that maybe we potentially table it one more time until we have an understanding of what the process would be regarding the rental of the building. Because moving forward with this vote without the understanding of that process question resolved, I think is a conflict.
Councilman Sachinelli, are you making the motion to table making a formal motion to table this item?
Correct, please.
The motion to table is non-debatable. So therefore, are you, just to clarify, are you making a motion to table this to when, the October meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there is a motion to table this item till the October meeting, made by Councilman Sachinelli. All those in favor, so by the sign of raising your hand. All those opposed have the same right. Any abstentions? This item number 10 on the MAN to One Park Place is tabled to the October meeting. Thank you.
Chairman Burnett, a
Yes,
question. At that time, Mr. Dashowitz and perhaps Mr. Livingston, can we get an answer as to what is the process from a rental standpoint and when that gets triggered? Is there a dollar amount and when it is triggered that the city is involved?
I would be happy to consult corporate counsel
Thank you.
and get their legal opinion
Thank you.
and present it at the next meeting or in advance.
Point of clarification, Chairman Burnett. I can only, this is
Yes.
Sharon, the secretary. I can only see 3 of the council members or the committee members. Was it a unanimous?
All those, yes, all those that voted in favor of tabling the item till October, Councilmember Hooverman, Councilmember Burnett, Councilmember Kides, Councilmember Revelous, and Councilmember Sacchinelli.
Oh, is Heidi back?
No, he is not.
No,
He
he's
had
not.
to drop off for a family emergency, so
That's Nelly, right?
he is no longer on this
Okay.
call.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Burnett, I also voted to
Yeah.
table it.
Yes, yes, Councilmember Keegan, Burnett, Hooverman, Revelous, and Sacchinelli.
Thank you.
No problem. Moving on to item number 11 on the agenda, which reads as follows. Authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all agreements and any other documents with ESO for the licensing purchase for 3 years and onboarding of records management software for the fire department on a sole source procurement basis for the contract amount not to exceed $58,665.15 from account noted. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Revelous, thank you. And we have with us from the fire department, Albert Bassett, Assistant Fire Chief, to cover this item.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. We, our records management system is at its end of service life. We've been doing extensive evaluation of different software packages over the last few years, and we've come to the conclusion that ESO is the vendor that we selected based on they are the company that took over our current system, which was Firehouse Software. They bought them a number of years ago, and the most important thing is our data from the last 25 years that we've been using Firehouse is priority 1 to get that moved over into our new system. So that was our original thought process there. The sole source, we sole sourced it on the direction of Karen Del Vecchio and the IT department, now Joyce, only because of the relationship between Firehouse and ESO and what they can do to bring our data over compared to the other vendors that we talked to, which would have been a little more of a labor intensive process. So I can answer any questions. Joyce is on, and we have our representative from ESO also on the call.
Are there any questions? Joyce, I don't know if you want to add any additional commentary from an IT standpoint and the migration of data from one system to the other?
Yes. So we realized that Firehouse software is toward to the end of the life cycle, right? And so last year we put it together $75,000 just to put on the capital budget. So this budget will coming off on capital budget of the IT department. So after out from the 3 years, the reason we go with the 3 years because the first year we have a lot of telestat integration, and we also have the CAD integration, which is a bridge between Firehouse and the police department LIA software. And we also have a data import and have a 5-section online trainings. So that is the first year total fee, and ESO give us a huge discount on some of those items. So going forward, the 4th year, we are going to have 18. So the base rate of each year is $18,349. So on the 4th year will be the IT operating budget. We also, yeah, Albert didn't mention that because by the suggestion of Sharon Connor, our purchase department, we're also looking for 2 other software, and we did intense search for the 2 other software, and we did interview. We also do the review of software, and ESO still come up on the top of our list. So I felt this ESO is a very great choice we have, and IT will work with ESO doing the data migration integration, and I think that's yeah. So I also Hannah Kern, she is our sales representative. She could answer any question that regarding to the ESO company.
Oh, Hannah, anything to add?
Sure, it's great to meet everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of the meeting tonight. My name is Hannah Kern. I'm actually the account manager who's been helping Norwalk Fire Department transition from Firehouse. I represent both Firehouse and our ESO customers. I've been with ESO for 3 years, and after about a year of conversations with the Norwalk Fire Department, we did decide it was the best decision for the fire department based on their number 2 needs, or 2 of their top needs, which is number 1, their past data. We basically built our brand new system off of the Firehouse program that they've been using for 25 years. So it's a very seamless migration. And so they were really happy to hear that they're not going to lose any of their data, but also we're waiving that fee entirely. So we've got the majority of fire departments in Connecticut on our Firehouse software now transitioning over, and we're really excited to bring them on board. Any questions, please, if you have any.
Councilmember Hooverman.
No, not really a question. Thank you, Chairman Burnett. Not really a question, just a comment. This sounds like a nice win-win for the city, and I'm glad to hear that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to hear that. We're very excited about that.
I had one question. Are there any examples, whether in Connecticut or outside of Connecticut, of this similar type of migration, and where you've had success and no data loss?
Sure. So I'd be happy to share those a list with you of the migrations that we've already done. Just in the past quarter, we've migrated over 500 different fire departments from Firehouse alone. So we're doing that about every quarter, and we do anticipate the end of life of Firehouse to be possibly at the end of 2022 or sometime in 2023. So we are trying to migrate over the remaining 12,000 customers that we have on Firehouse, and we're making our way headstrong. But if you'd like a list, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. I'll just connect with the fire departments first to ask for their approval, and I'd be happy to do that.
No need for a list. I was just looking for anecdotal information as if you've had successful migrations.
Chairman Burnett, I'd like to add to Hannah's comments that in this conversation with ESO, they know what can come over and what we're going to have trouble bringing over. If in the Firehouse program, there's a lot of data in there, and the way it was put in over 25 years might not be able to seamlessly come over. We're going to have to manually do that, but they're giving us that heads up that that's going to have to happen. So that's one good thing. And another comment is our Firehouse software is actually on our servers, which is good because we can go back to year 1 and retrieve that data, even not bringing it over also. So that's got really not much to do with ESO, more with our IT department having it on the in-house servers over the previous 25 years.
And I'd like to comment on that too. Thanks, Albie. The server database, you will never lose your data as well. You'll be able to maintain that on whatever sort of either database or just record system that you want. Just so you know, even though Firehouse is sunsetting, we're never going to own that data. You guys will always have access to it. So however you want to retrieve that out, just as a safety net, that would be a great project. But everything that they're migrating over to now is entirely cloud-based. So it's much safer. They're taking it off the server, which is kind of the new way of the land. It'll make the reporting system so much easier for the fire department. They'll be able to access it from anywhere whether they want to do reports in the truck or at the station or at home, based on the rules given, but everything will be cloud-based. And we use Microsoft Azure to make sure that data is secure. And we obviously will never own that data, even though Microsoft Azure will host it, we'll just manage it. And down the road, heaven forbid they do choose to leave ESO, it's a free migration of the data out of the program. So you guys can take that to a new vendor as well. Finger crossed, that won't be the case, but just so you know, we're never the owners of it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for support of this motion by the raise of hand. I see Council Member Tom Keegan, Council Member David Hooverman, Council Member Diana Revelous, Council Member Nick Sacchinelli, and Council Member Greg Burnett. It's unanimous. Okay, thank you. So this item will move to the next council meeting on Tuesday, September 14th for full council approval.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, that moves us now to item 12, which is the final item on the agenda and reads as follows. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute agreement with Roll Call Technologies LLC for Project 4083 City of Norwalk Police Department Extra Duty Management System. Do we have approval on this motion? Council Member Tom Keegan, thank you. And we have on the Henry Dakowitz, our Chief Financial Officer, and Sue Zecker, Deputy Chief, Police Chief, to cover this item.
I'd be glad to start. I think this is a proud achievement for the city. This was multidisciplinary. Several departments had to work and coordinate to get us to where we need to be. Extra work, if people are not familiar, is when police officers are required to do special duty. For example, if we have a parade or if a utility company is digging up in the streets and we need officers to control traffic. There's a whole process of figuring out from the clients, whether it's the utility company, a private company, or internal with DPW, the assignments that need to be staffed. There's a cost involved when it's an outside non-city client, where there's a base rate plus a 15% premium paid for the city's administrative costs. The work has to get done, billing has to occur, payment has to be received, and that payment, part of it goes to the officers who conducted the work, and part has to go to the city controller's office. So there's a lot of coordination. A lot of it is done manually. And we do have some computer systems that are, I believe, at least 12 years old. Police department approached this. Sharon Connors in purchasing talked about doing an RFP. So we went out, we solicited invitations, we screened, I think it was at least 3 finalists, and Roll Call was the winner that accommodated all the different areas and departments. Some of the benefits, this is automated so officers can sign up for jobs and get updates through their phone. It can be on the back end, they will do the billing, they will do collections and guarantee payments. So consequently, our controller's office is freed up a little bit of some of those duties, and we don't have any bad debts for people and clients that don't pay us. So it's a real win-win-win. We have on the meeting tonight several people. Mickey Dosimo, who is the financial officer for the police, and Deputy Chief Zecca representing police, Joyce Liu representing IT, Chitsime Lamb representing controller's office, and several personnel from Roll Call, including Albert Vasquez, who is the vice president of sales. So I open the floor for whoever would like to make some comments.
So I'd just like to speak to the fact that this system is really needed for us. Currently, we have an employee who is consistently making calls and to hire officers for the extra work, where this this platform will take it outside of the police department and I believe be more efficient for us.
Albert, would you like to maybe describe roll call a little bit and introduce yourself?
Absolutely, Henry. In the meeting room with me is the president of our company roll call. His name's Stephen Power. I'll let him kind of kick us off really quickly.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Henry. Good evening, Chairman Burnett, council members, and Deputy Chief Zeka. It's a real pleasure and privilege to have the opportunity to speak with all of you this evening. The purpose of roll call is we work with 1,400 law enforcement agencies in 38 states, and we help them manage their off-duty programs. The purpose of our company is to help provide better programs for communities and cities and law enforcement agencies to provide efficiency and control and ease of use and convenience for the citizens and the cities and the departments. And we are really excited to have this opportunity to serve all of you in the community and help you run these more effective programs. So that's just a really quick overview of what we do. We're based in Dallas, Texas, but operating in 38 states across the United States, literally working with over 1,400 departments across America running these programs.
Any other comments or questions?
Henry, one question I have to you, through you, is there a cost to the city for having this management system?
Yes, there is. And Albert can testify that we negotiated hard. Roll call will get 7.5% of the billed items. And I forgot to include my good friend Ray Burney in Human Resources, who was intimately involved in working through this solution. And Ray and I determined that we could not introduce this service and pass it on to users and charge them 22.5%. We stated that our goal was that the users of the service, the clients, would still pay 15%, but that the city would remain whole. So the police department has reassigned that individual who used to be focused on this 100%. And both HR and the finance department have found some monies to make the city whole on this process. So in essence, the users will still pay 15%. The roll call will get 7.5%. The city will get the other 7.5%. Some of the savings will be the write-offs on receivables that we will no longer have because payments are guaranteed. Some of it will be savings of personnel in the police department and some other funds that we have. We felt it was imperative to implement this solution, but at the same time, protect the city from getting any negative financial result.
Thank you for that. Let me ask it a different way. Is there a dollar amount associated with us approving this authorization?
Dollar amount approved for this authorization. I think the way the contract is worded, I mean, again, there's an estimate of how much extra work is done in a year. We know what those numbers are. You can calculate the 7.5% and project that that's the value of the contract. What I would emphasize is that Ray and I, with Deputy Chief Zeka and Chitsime Lamb, we have worked together to make the city whole, that we expect to have savings in other areas so that the 7.5% that the city used to get, the 15%, the 7.5% we will get going forward, plus the savings, will not negatively impact the city.
Councilmember Hooverman.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett. Just to understand, this is a cloud-based solution, so there's no hardware that needs to go in or anything like that, correct?
You are correct, sir.
Okay, and that we've looked at this ties into our security, being that it's a cloud-based solution, that it's a secure platform that ties in with all of our network security for the city, correct?
Joyce, you may want to talk about how you reviewed all three candidates, one of whom, if I recall, did not satisfy those requirements that we have for the city.
Right. So I can point out there's a three major item that roll call really stand out. They do implementation of the policy that multi-factor authentication. They also for the admins and also on the trusted location access. So they are cloud-based, but if the client with admin rights, they will have what we call is a whitelist. The location, so only certain location that can access the application. So they also using Azure AD authentication. And with they also doing the SQL auditing, which is they will audit all the queries and all the store procedures that against the database. So these are the three major things that when we look at this roll call, we felt that not only their functionality is great, but the security wise is really up to our IT standard.
I would like to add, this is also a good example of the development that was created between purchasing and IT. What we do now is there's an IT questionnaire that is part of the RFP process. And before people select a vendor, they have to get that IT evaluation of their processes. And in this case, one of the three companies we were considering was not acceptable. Okay. Secondly, after we select the firm, and we enter into a contract, just like we have insurance riders in every contract, we now have an IT rider that talks about cybersecurity and certifications. And if, God forbid, you're hacked, you have notification requirements to us. So we're doing it on the front end with the RFP, and then we're doing it on the back end with the contract because we're very sensitive to these kinds of security issues.
That's very, very good to hear. I'm glad that we have those types of protocols in process now, even in the RFP process, because we're seeing more and more attacks and more municipalities that are being attacked in this way and attempted attacks, and I'm glad to hear that. So thank you.
Yes, we are very sensitive. I think for the last 18 to 24 months. There's been a tremendous increase in breaches caused with third parties. It's the Internet of Things, and we open up our network to vendors. So that's when Joyce and Karen before her talked with Sharon and myself, and we said, what do we do to deal with it? So now we have the protocol is that every RFP has that questionnaire, and then on the back end, we button it up with the contract.
That's great. Thank you. Appreciate the answer.
Welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments related to this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for support of this motion by a raise of hands. Councilmember Tom Keegan, Councilmember David Hooverman, Councilmember Greg Burnett, Councilmember Diana Revelous, and Councilmember Nick Sachinelli. It is unanimous. Thank you. This item will now move to the next council meeting on Tuesday, September 14th for full council approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Albert and Steve and everyone else.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
Item 13, motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
okay, Councilmember Hooverman, thank you. I'll call for support.
Raise my hand though first.
No fighting, no fighting. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for a good meeting. A lot of items covered. And have a good rest of the evening and see everyone on the 14th at the full council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Greg.